Good morning.
Morning.
All right. I think we are going to get started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Janet Dominitz. I'm the board chair of U.S. PIRG and executive director of Mass PIRG. We are a nonpartisan public interest organization standing in public interest. To introduce this event, I just want you to know you're a member of the press on the Zoom webinar. You can ask questions in the chat box by providing your name or outlet and your question, and we will get to as many as we can. And if you're watching on Facebook, I am hoping that that's up and running. Please share your stories and questions, and staff members of U.S. Consumer Reports will attempt to address all of them. Thank you, Senator Markey, Leighton Consumer Reports, and consumer advocate Jeff Stansfield for joining today's webinar, Why Airlines Need to Provide Full Cash Refunds to Passengers in the Coronavirus Pandemic. Just a few months ago, people across the country were planning their summers. Family trips to grandparents, vacations to one of the country's great national parks, historic cities, or to visit the beach. Businesses were buying tickets to get new clients or attend a major conference. That has all changed. As cases of the novel coronavirus persist, deciding not to fly remains the healthy choice. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warn that traveling in crowded, closed-in settings increases risk of exposure to COVID-19. Airports and airplanes definitely fit that bill. Most airlines only offering cash refunds when they cancel or make significant changes to their flights, which is already required by law. Even then, many airlines push you for vouchers for future travel first, only noting the cash refund option after consumer directly requests. First, don't want to choose between waiting for a flight cancellation and taking a voucher. American Airline recently reported given options, and 90% customers chose a full cash refund over travel vouchers. Despite receiving a multi-billion-dollar bailout and posting record profits prior to the pandemic, airlines continue to send passengers cash. And meanwhile, Americans need money now to pay rent, utilities, or buy food. Even when widespread travel resumes, some may decide they don't want to risk infection, while others may simply have the means to cover travel costs, given the economic toll of the ongoing financial crisis. We believe airlines have a responsibility to provide full cash refunds to anyone who wants them. That's why our organizations, along with Senator Markey, more than 200,000 individual Americans have joined together to demand that airlines full refunds to anyone who asks them because of the coronavirus. Now, I would like to introduce a longtime champion of all consumers, and in this case, all airline passengers, Senator Ed Markey.
Thank you, Janet, so much. Thank you for all of the fantastic work that you are doing. Thank you to U.S. PIRG, to Consumer Reports, both for organizing today's petition delivery and for your steadfast advocacy for the American consumer. I'm proud to stand with you in this fight to return Americans' hard-earned money to their pockets. And my thanks also to Anna Leighton, Director of Financial Policy at Consumer Reports, and to Jennifer Stansfield Marek, our remarkable Change.org petition organizer. Change.org has done a fantastic job. You've organized an amazing 250,000 consumers to speak out and demand their money back from the airlines. Even before the coronavirus emergency began, air travelers were getting tipped upside down and their pockets emptied by exorbitant airline fees, from checking a bag to picking a seat to changing their flight plans. In 2018, the top 10 airlines collected $35.2 billion in these ancillary fees alone. So I'm disappointed, but not surprised, that most airlines are only giving out travel vouchers instead of real cash refunds to passengers who do the right thing for public health and proactively cancel their own tickets during the coronavirus crisis. And even though airlines are required by law to offer cash when the airline itself cancels a flight, most airlines, as their default option, offer to rebook passengers instead. And this forces consumers to jump through unnecessary hoops to actually get their money back. These anti-consumer practices are why I led 8 of my colleagues in a letter to every major domestic airline demanding cash refunds for all canceled tickets during the coronavirus pandemic. Even though most airlines refused to tell us how much consumer cash they're sitting on in unused tickets, we received enough data to estimate that the airlines could be holding on to more than $10 billion of hard-earned money that American travelers gave to the airlines. At a time when families are struggling to pay for food, for housing, for prescriptions, it's absolutely unconscionable that the airlines won't return this money to consumers, especially after they received a multi-billion-dollar bailout from the Congress using American taxpayers' dollars. Today's petitions reflect how badly Americans need cash in their pockets, not temporary credits towards unknown future travel. Returning this money back to consumers would be a significant stimulus for the public during the current emergency. So I wholeheartedly join your call, Janet and Anna and Jennifer and all the consumers who are out there to once again urge the airlines to stop profiting on the backs of American consumers during this pandemic. Unfortunately, it is very clear that most airlines won't do the right thing on their own. And that's why today I am introducing the Cash Refunds for Coronavirus Cancellations Act. I am proud to be joined by Senators Warren and Blumenthal and Murphy and Harris. Our bill is simple. It requires cash to be provided by the major airlines for all cancellations during the coronavirus pandemic, regardless of whether the airline canceled the flight or a traveler canceled their ticket. This new right will be retroactive so that anyone who received a travel voucher that goes back to the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic will be able to demand a refund now. And it will extend 180 days past the end of our official nationwide emergency declarations so that consumers can have flexibility and peace of mind until they truly feel safe flying again. In light of the pressing financial need amongst American families and an unprecedented bailout, airlines have a moral responsibility to give consumers their cash back. My bill will give them a legal responsibility as well to return that money to consumers. As Congress debates the next relief package, I will fight to make sure that my cash refund bill is included. We cannot continue to bail out big businesses while only giving scraps to families and individuals in need. So I'm proud to have Consumer Reports and U.S. PIRG support for this legislation. I look forward to working with you and all of the consumers who have signed today's petitions to make cash refunds mandatory during this pandemic. We do not have a choice. We must give this money back to passengers, give it back to consumers. The airlines are keeping it when the passengers, as consumers, as heads of families, need this money in their pockets for food, for rent, for mortgages, for prescription drugs. It is absolutely wrong that they're keeping it. Our legislation, this movement, is now ready to fight. So thank you, Janet, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Senator Markey. It never gets old saying thank you for your leadership on behalf of consumers. I want to introduce our next panelist, Anna Layton, who's the Director of Financial Fairness for Consumer Reports. Anna, thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you so much, Senator Markey, for joining us and for your leadership. I'm here today because we've heard from thousands of people who told us about the difficulties they faced in accessing refunds from airlines after being forced to cancel spring breaks, graduation celebrations, wedding travel, conferences, and other events. And many thousands more signed our petition, calling on the airlines to do the right thing, provide refunds to all travelers who've had to cancel their flights this year due to stay-at-home orders and other fallout from the crisis. This morning, we joined with PIRG and with Jennifer, who'll speak next, to send our 3 combined petitions to the same 11 domestic airlines that Senator Markey wrote to. Nearly 250,000 people calling on the airlines to do the right thing by their customers and provide them with full refunds. As we detail in our letters to the airlines, we heard many stories about why consumers are so adamant about wanting cash refunds. We heard from older consumers who fear they will never feel comfortable flying again and see no value at all in a travel voucher. Jeannie from Connecticut wrote that any voucher, even one that is good for a year and a half or 2 years, may be useless to her. She says, I'm old. Who knows where I'll be in December 2021? I would really like my money back. Other consumers are now suddenly out of work and are facing crippling bills. As Dory, who recently lost her job, wrote, this was our only vacation we had planned for the year. We won't be able to take another trip worth the same amount in flight credits later this year. We don't fly anywhere often for vacation, work, or otherwise. As others have noted, the Department of Transportation requires airlines to provide refunds to consumers if the airline cancels or makes a significant change to a traveler's itinerary. But there's no similar requirement if a consumer has to cancel their own travel. While that may make sense at some normal times, at this moment, that distinction is absurd. Nearly everyone is canceling their plans. It should not matter whether a particular flight was canceled or not. It's simply wrong to deny refunds to consumers who canceled their flights during a global pandemic. The airline should provide refunds to all customers whose travel plans were impacted by this unprecedented public health and economic crisis. With so many Americans out of work and facing financial hardship, a voucher for future travel is simply not appropriate or useful. These consumers need their money back. They're being required to make no interest loans to the airlines that many of them can't afford to make. This, even after taxpayers have already given the U.S. passenger airlines $50 billion in grants and loans. It's simply unfair, and we urge the airlines to change their policies immediately. We aren't the only ones hearing from consumers about this. The Department of Transportation announced yesterday they've received more than 25,000 complaints on this issue in just the last couple months. It is time for the airlines to step up and give their customers refunds, or for the department to direct the airlines to do so. But given that that doesn't seem to be happening, we are absolutely thrilled that Senator Markey and his co-sponsors are introducing this legislation today. We look forward to working with you to get this bill passed into law and to securing refunds for everyone whose flight plans have been impacted during this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we are going to call on our consumer advocate, Jennifer Stansfield, to take the floor. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to thank Senator Markey, Consumer Reports, and U.S. PIRG for inviting me to speak today. My husband and I have been planning a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Italy to celebrate our 40th birthdays. We decided on a travel date in September of 2020 and booked our tickets in November of 2019 on United Airlines. Not long after, the coronavirus hit. In March of 2020, I received a text message stating that I could change my flight before the end of the month with no penalties, and after some discussion, my husband and I decided it was time to cancel our trip. When I called United and asked for a refund, I was denied and offered a travel voucher, which I did not accept. Why would I want a voucher when studies are showing that we're going to be under some sort of social distancing until 2022? I'll never be able to use that voucher before it expires, meaning I'm out nearly $2,000. I was upset, so I went on Twitter and looked at United's tweets and replies. The feed was full of people tweeting at United, telling them that they didn't want vouchers for canceled travel. They wanted refunds. And that's when I realized this wasn't just happening to me. This was happening to everyone. And I thought, the airline industry just received a multi-billion-dollar taxpayer bailout, but their customers can't get their money back? That's not right. And that's why I started the change.org petition, which as of today has received over 140,000 supporters. With this petition, we are asking that every person who has had to cancel travel or who has had their travel canceled due to COVID-19 receives a cash refund. This ask applies to all airlines. Vouchers are unacceptable. We understand that the airline industry is going through an unprecedented economic hardship, but so are we. And we do not have the benefit of a multi-billion-dollar taxpayer bailout. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all the panelists. So we're going to take several minutes to take questions from reporters, and a reminder that if you are a reporter and you have a question, you should put your name and your outlet and your question into the chat. And we will start with our first question, which is from Jessica Werman. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. The question is for Senator Markey. And the question is, during the May 6th Commerce Committee hearing, Airlines for America argued refunding all of the cash for canceled tickets would drive them into bankruptcy. Can you please respond to this? Thank you very much.
Yes, that's a great question. When I wrote to the 11 airlines, Spirit and Allegiant both agreed that they would return the money to consumers, and they are amongst the smallest of the airlines. So if Spirit and Allegiant can refund this money in cash to consumers, then the airlines, which are much larger, can do so as well. And again, they can actually use the money that the Congress gave them for the airlines while not touching the money that was given by the Congress for the workers. So if Spirit and Allegiant can do it, so can't the large airlines as well. I don't think they have an excuse.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Sarah Stolper at Channel 5 for Senator Markey. Have you spoken with the airlines directly?
Yeah, we're in constant communication with the airlines. Obviously, I wrote to each of them, asked them for their response on this issue. Spirit and Allegiant said they would do it. The other airlines either have said they won't or have refused to do so. Refused to do so because they're saying it could affect their bottom line. But of course, my concern is that there's a bottom line for consumers, for families that are out there right now. And right now, the airlines are holding on to the money that rightfully belongs to their passengers. So yes, we've been communicating with the airlines, and thus far, for the majors, we have not received a satisfactory response.
And a follow-up question, Senator Markey, from Sarah Stolper from WCVB TV. Would this legislation apply to international airlines?
Yeah, this would apply to any international airline as well that flies in and out of the United States. They would be bound by the very same guidelines that they have to return the funding to the passengers if it was a ticket that got canceled by a passenger because that passenger was afraid for his or her health.
Okay, I'm going to take host privilege for a moment and ask really all three of the panelists for a quick response. It seems to me, I do extensive research, but it seems to me a petition that gets a response from 200,000 consumers is unique. I don't think that happens frequently, but I would love to hear from each of you, Jennifer, from the feedback you've gotten, Anna, from other work you've done like this, and Senator Markey. Is that something that happens often, or how does this stand out to you? So let's start with Jennifer.
It was very unexpected. I started the petition and didn't really expect it to go anywhere. So to see that many people sign it means that I wasn't the only person who was feeling powerless. So yes, I was definitely surprised.
I'll jump in. Yes, we're absolutely surprised. And we have three different measurements we're looking at. One is our petition, and Jen and your petition and how well they did. But also we asked our members and our readers for stories, and they sent in very detailed stories, 3,000 of them, telling us how frustrated they were and how much they need that money back. And then finally, the news yesterday that 25,000 plus people have sent in complaints to the Department of Transportation. We have long complained that nobody knows about the Department of Transportation complaints system. Nobody can find it, and it's hard to use. But in the last 2 months, 25,000 people figured out how to use that, and that's enormously more than normal, in order to say that they were having a problem with their airline. And that speaks to the level of concern and the amount these people really just simply need their money back.
And Janet, I think that's a great question, Janet. Given the fact that there could be upwards of $10 billion of passenger consumer money that the airlines are holding right now, I think we just have unleashed a consumer revolt. And we can see it in the number of people who are signing on to the petition, because $10 billion is a lot of money to a lot of families across this country to make sure they get the help which they need for their families during this crisis. The airlines got what they needed from the federal government. Now these families need this money back so that they can take care of their families.
Thank you to all three of you. Senator Markey, David Koenig at AP asks, did you try to include a refund provision in the CARES Act? And what makes you think that this provision could successfully be included in a future bill? DOT yesterday sent out guidance that indicated that in fact consumers are not due cash refunds if they cancel flights. Were you surprised by this guidance? What was your reaction to it? Oh, sorry, those were two different questions. So let's start with the first one from David Koenig about the CARES Act.
We did not seek to accomplish that goal earlier. However, we believe now the movement has built to a point where we have a tidal wave of outrage that is now heading towards the airline industry, and we think now is the time to make the move to include this provision in the next coronavirus package that is moving through the United States Congress.
Then I blended them together. Sorry, Jess Werman asked about DOT. They sent out guidance that indicated that in fact consumers are not due cash refunds if they cancel flights. Were you surprised by this guidance? What was your reaction to it?
Well, all that the Department of Transportation did was something that, of course, is existing policy for the airline industry. They, of course, have to give back money to any passenger if the airline canceled the flight. But we're saying, no, this healthcare crisis is something that necessitated passengers canceling flights as well. And it was because of federal policy to a large extent. It was because of the warning that was coming from the federal government. And we've been bailing out the airline industry. And so, no, I am not surprised that the Department of Transportation took that position, because it still insulates the airlines from their responsibility to give reimbursement to passengers. So I'm not surprised by this Department of Transportation.
Okay. The next question, and again, I apologize for any pronunciation problems. Amy Peachy from CBS Money Watch asks, the FTC says, quote, airlines must offer refunds even when flight disruptions are outside their control, unquote. Are airlines declining refunds when consumers ask for them directly? If so, on what grounds?
I'd be happy to jump in here. Great. But the DOT guidance yesterday, yes, it didn't go far enough. But one thing it indicated is what we're hearing, that not only are the airlines causing problems for the people who cancel their own flights, but we've heard repeatedly from consumers that even when the airline cancels their flight, they're having trouble getting refunds. And the DOT has had to put out 2 guidances to the airlines to remind them of that basic responsibility. We're hearing that airlines are really pushing vouchers on people, and people have to ask and call and call and call just to get the refund that they are legally entitled to. We put out some tips for folks a few weeks ago, and have been hearing that persistence is paying off for people who are owed those refunds. So that's the first piece, that the DOT has had to put out guidance twice, shows that the airline industry isn't doing enough, even for people who are legally entitled. But then there's that second piece where DOT is not willing to go, and Senator Markey and we believe strongly that in this public health emergency, there's no difference between a canceled flight by the airline and a trip that a consumer decides not to take because of the coronavirus.
Thank you, Anna. I know that Senator Markey only has until 11 p.m. The rest of us can definitely stay around for more conversation, but I have another question for Senator Markey from Nicholas from the outlet Just the News, JTN News. Senator Markey, what do you want to see Congress do to ensure that Americans receive full refunds for canceled flights due to COVID-19?
Well, as I said, it would be preferable if the airlines agreed to do it voluntarily. That's what Spirit and Allegiant have agreed to do. But if they are not willing to do so, then I am going to move forward with legislation that mandates that they have to give that money back, and that will make it contingent upon them receiving any additional money from the federal government in order to bail out the airlines. I just think it's time for us to play hardball with the industry, because the industry is playing hardball with consumers, with passengers, with families that need the money desperately, that they've given over to the airlines for a flight that many of these families will never take, and they should just be given the money back. So that's my goal.
And if I might add an editorial a comment there, you know, when we say that the airlines are getting bailout money is our money. You know, that's our tax dollars. So, you know, on one hand, they have our tax dollars. On the other hand, they have our ticket purchases. And, you know, like I said in a comment the other day, that just doesn't fly. Sorry to be corny. But, so I think this will be the last question for Senator Markey. I know that you're on a tight schedule. From Alexandra Gonzalez, so I don't see the outlet here. What further measures will be taken by Congress to ensure that the airlines comply? Are there plans for more legislation to enforce? What are current repercussions for not complying?
Well, again, that's what the legislation is all about. That's what we're announcing. Legislation, we have 8 senators on board. We're going to build a movement around this issue. We have to force the airlines to do what they should do as a matter of conscience. But we're going to change it so it's a matter of law that they have to do it, because consumers just can't be a piggy bank for the airlines. Consumers need their own piggy bank right now for their families' needs, and we're going to make sure that's the law in our country.
Senator Markey, we know we only had you until 11 a.m. We're truly grateful for your time and for your leadership on this issue. Anna, Jennifer, and I will stay there if there are other questions. But in the meantime, again, we are grateful for your participation and for your leadership on this issue.
Thank you so much, Janet. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everyone who got on this call. Thank you.
Stay well. Okay, so Jennifer or Anna, do you want to add anything else? I don't see any additional questions, but I know we had limited time. So if anything came up in the last several minutes that you want to address, I want to ask you either or both of you to add any wrap-up comments.
Sure. I really appreciated Senator Markey's final comment there about how the American public shouldn't be a piggy bank for the airlines. The airlines are using this ticket money that consumers cannot spend for trips they cannot take. And they need to give that back. People are hurting right now. They're waiting for their $1,200 stimulus check. People have lost their jobs. They need this money back. And there really is no difference right now between a canceled flight and a flight that consumers had to cancel. And that distinction should be erased for this crisis.
Anna, there was a question from David Koenig about how this compares to Consumer Reports previous claims. In other words, I think it's a place where a lot of Americans turn when there's a consumer issue. And how would you say this compares to the past several years, different consumer complaints that have come in?
Sure, I think it's really interesting. And I will say, David, that we haven't done that analysis, but the pace at which complaints came in was pretty astounding to us. The 3,200 stories we received was more than we get on virtually, I think, any story asked. I will confirm that, but that kind of number is pretty rare. And I want to dig into this DOT complaints because I don't think they get close to 25,000 in 2 months ever. I need to check that, but that is a really large number. So people are definitely frustrated. And granted, people are always frustrated about the airlines. You're right, bag fees, seat selection fees. Just before this crisis began, Consumer Reports spent about 6 months talking about the absurdity of families being asked to pay more in order for parents to sit next to their children on a plane. There are lots of problems in this industry and lots of things for consumers to complain about. But right now, when no one can fly and people are counting every dollar, this is something that's hitting really close to home, especially in cases like Jennifer's with a big trip plan. That can be a lot of money, a once-in-a-lifetime trip. We heard from a lot of people with similar situations.
Yeah, I guess I will take MC privilege and wrap up by saying to Jennifer, I don't know if you feel this way, but me, looking for, I hesitate to say silver linings, but we're all looking every day since the beginning of this, what can we take from it? How can we change things for the better after, we get past at least the worst of this? I feel like what you said earlier, you didn't expect this to go anywhere. Putting aside the air issue, which is a huge one, I think the idea that an individual person has such an important role to play can, raise their voice and mobilize and generate the concerns that we have as a community. I think that's something that hopefully, we all take from this, that we're only going to move forward if we identify what's in the public interest and ways that we use our voice together. So I really just wanted to say thank you for your efforts. And I think it's what all consumer and public advocacy is about. And it was really a pleasure and an honor to share this panel with Jennifer, Anna, and with Senator Markey. And we look forward to get our money back. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.